All right, so today I would like to talk about Srila Prabhupada's legacy as far as preaching in the West. Srila Prabhupada was ISKCON's first preacher in the West, and arguably our most successful. So sometimes we hear talk about how it's not easy to preach in the West, preaching's dead in North America, things like that. I'm here to tell you it's not true. And I'm also here to tell you that you guys are part of the solution, okay? So, would all the preachers in the room please raise their hands? Would all the preachers in the room please raise their hands? One more time, all the preachers in the room, get those hands up. Okay. Now everybody who has your hand down, raise your hand. Because you are all preachers. We are all preachers. Some people preach by directly sharing the philosophy with others, by presenting a book, by over-preaching. But the rest of us are also preaching. There's a famous quotation that's attributed to St. Francis of Assisi, and it said that he told his disciples to preach constantly and sometimes use words. Okay? So what does that mean? It means that by our behavior, by our attitudes, by all the things we do all day long, we're preaching. Anybody who knows that you're a devotee is getting a message from you about what Krishna consciousness is like and what it has to offer. All of your work colleagues, your neighbors, even if you think, well, no one actually knows that I'm a devotee, your children, you're preaching to your children. You're preaching to your spouse. You're preaching to your parents. So, we have this opportunity to give out Srila Prabhupada's message. And I would really like to talk about that in more depth, but I need the PowerPoint presentation that my husband worked for 10 hours on. So I can't go any farther until we get that PowerPoint presentation up. Haribol! There's a gesture. It's here, it's up there. I can't see it. Okay? Can we get it up here, or no, it's only out there? I need it up here. I have many mystic powers, but I can't see through walls. All right, so if you could see the first slide, it would say, Outreach in the West, Srila Prabhupada's Legacy. And one of the things that I'd like to talk about is community building. I'd like to talk about who is a member of our community. Then I'd like to talk about how we relate to each other, how we form our community, and how we can be more intentional about it. And then I'd like to describe some of the things that we're doing in the San Diego Yatra that might inspire you to do some things also. All right, so anybody have a definition of what an ISKCON community member is? Does it have to be somebody who chants 16 rounds a day? No. Okay. Does it have to be somebody who chants any rounds? No. Does it have to be somebody who thinks that someday I'd like to get initiated? Yeah, some people are saying yes, some people are saying no. Okay. Does it have to be somebody who believes that Krishna is God? Okay, we got a pretty definite yes on that. Okay. I'm going to disagree with you, but I'm going to get to why I disagree with you at some point. All right, so if you could see the next slide, it would be a very nice painting of Srila Prabhupada. And I talk about, and I'm going to talk about anyway, that Srila Prabhupada wanted to engage the whole world. It said that he would build a house the whole world could live in. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, we're going to spread this message to every town and village. The Lord's names will be heard in every town and village. So what does that mean in terms of building our communities? Should we be selective or should we be inclusive? Okay. Oh, great. We're making progress here. That's the slide I was just talking about. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. Yeah. That nice one on the left, if we could just bring that full screen. So at this point, I'm going to segue into how Srila Prabhupada began his preaching. All right? And one of the things about Srila Prabhupada's preaching is that he was not terribly selective. All right? He himself said, Krishna, I wanted first-class men, Krishna sent me 10th-class men. But he accepted those 10th-class men, and he built this movement with them. So, if you can't see it, this is a picture of Mukunda Goswami, back when he was Mukunda Das Adhikari, his wife Janaki, and Srila Prabhupada. And the quotation at the top says, Mr. Michael, there has been some trouble. And I'd like to just tell a little anecdote related to that. His Holiness Mukunda Goswami, when he first started coming to ISKCON, was interested, but he wasn't sold out. He wasn't sure that this was for him, and he worked. He didn't go to Srila Prabhupada's programs all day, and he felt a little uncomfortable around the devotees who did. He was not a sectarian, he was still taking drugs, and he wasn't somebody that we might have thought should be a member of our community. Then, he got into legal trouble. He got arrested for statutory rape and for possession of marijuana with intent to distribute. And back in the, those would be serious charges today, but back in the mid-60s, those were extremely serious charges. Mukunda Goswami was a musician, and he found that his friends, his contacts in the music industry, all of a sudden people weren't taking his calls. You know, he said his friends and relatives kind of disappeared, all right? But someone called him. Srila Prabhupada called him and said, Mr. Michael, there has been some trouble. Srila Prabhupada reached out to somebody who was not 100% a devotee, you know, in some trouble. Srila Prabhupada didn't know that Mukunda Maharaj was innocent of these charges. He just knew that the man had been arrested and it had been in the newspapers. But he reached out to Mukunda Maharaj and expressed his sympathy and offered support. And Mukunda Maharaj, in his book, Miracle on 2nd Avenue, says, that phone call changed my life. Okay? Because who was there for him at the time of his need? Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki. He started to examine all of his goals and aspirations, the way his life was going, and concluded that he needed to take more of an interest in Krishna consciousness, and ultimately became one of Srila Prabhupada's first disciples, went to England, did so much service, because Srila Prabhupada could look past the immediate and see the potential, and in addition, was willing to offer love and support, not just philosophy. So if we could go to the next slide, thank you. This is a photograph of Mother Krishna Nandini from Cleveland, and it says, wherever I see a spark of devotion, I must fan it. And if you haven't heard Mother Krishna Nandini's Radhastami lecture, you should. If you Google Krishna Nandini and Radhastami, you'll find it very easily. She tells how she came to be initiated. She and her mother, Bhumata Devi, were living in Cleveland. Mother Bhumata was a yoga instructor, and so she became interested in Krishna consciousness. But for whatever reason, Krishna Nandini and her mother didn't fit in the Cleveland temple. And the conflict got so bad that they were actually banned from the temple. At one point the police were called and they were made to leave. So, you know, intelligently they thought, well, we can't associate with devotees here. It's hard to practice Krishna consciousness here. We need to go somewhere else. So, you know, with full dedication, they decided they're just taking their children, their husbands didn't want to go, so they have to leave the husbands behind, and they're going to find a new temple community. They didn't even know where they were going, but they got in the car and they ended up in Dallas, all right? And they went to the temple president and, you know, asked if they could stay, and he made a call to Cleveland, where they had come from, and heard what had happened and said, no, absolutely not, you can't stay here. And Mother Bhumata said, you know, we're unprotected women with small children, you can't kick us out. You know, we've driven all the way, please, you can't kick us out. So he said, you can stay one day, but Srila Prabhupada is coming tomorrow, so then you have to leave. And that was probably what he should not have said to her, because once Mother Bhumata heard that Srila Prabhupada was coming, she was not leaving. You know? So when Srila Prabhupada came, he actually met with her. She had written to him before, so he knew of her. And he met with her, and she found out that there was going to be an initiation, and she told the temple president, I want to get initiated. And my children also. She had her daughter and some sons, I think 4 sons with her. And she wanted her children to get initiated also. And guess what his answer was? Absolutely not. Okay? But Srila Prabhupada heard that she wanted to get initiated, and he said, well, let me talk to her. And the devotees, senior devotees in our movement, said, Prabhupada, you can't do this. We don't know this woman. She doesn't have any connection with the temple, community. We don't know her practice or her philosophy. And furthermore, she made trouble in Cleveland. You can't do this. And this was Srila Prabhupada's reply. Wherever I see a spark of devotion, I must fan it. And so he initiated Krishnanandini, her mother Bhumata, and 2 of her brothers. And, just like so many who received Srila Prabhupada's mercy, they did so much service. They built the Cleveland Yatra. Krishnanandini and her husband run the Grihastha Vision team. But Srila Prabhupada, he didn't look at what we lacked. He looked at what was there and how he could help us make it grow. Next slide, please. So this one says, Krishna's mercy is for everyone. And there's a quotation from Thomas Merton underneath that I can't see, but I'll try to read it to you. The beginning of love is to let those we love be perfectly themselves and not try to turn them in to fit our own image. Otherwise, we love only the reflection of ourselves we see in others. In other words, it's very natural, it's very human to feel most comfortable around people who are like us. It's hardwired into our brains, okay? But we can't carry that into our preaching. We just can't, because Krishna's mercy is for everyone. There's no way that this message is going to spread to every town and village unless we're willing to extend it to people who don't look like us, don't talk like us, don't think like us. Next slide, please. So this is our philosophy in San Diego. Those who are attracted to any of the prescribed practices of Bhakti Yoga are welcome community members. We want everyone to feel like they're part of our community, even if they're not sure if Krishna is God. If they like kirtan, if they like prasadam, if they just like us, that's good enough. And we will include them in our community. Next slide, please. Okay, so sometimes when we express this philosophy, we hear back, okay, but isn't that kind of dangerous? You don't know, who you're getting. You don't know, what kind of contamination they might bring into your community. Okay, and I will say you do have to be practical. You don't take a brand new bhakta and put them in charge of the treasury or, whatever. Ask them to do an interview with the news. You have to be thoughtful about this. But we also have to have faith in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he promised us that we could become purified by chanting the holy names. And that's not just for us because we are wearing tilak or, we saw Srila Prabhupada and fell in love. It's for everybody. This process works for absolutely everybody who takes it up. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but it works. Krishna also says, in this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So sometimes we feel like, we bring people into our community, we extend ourselves, they hang around for a few months, and then we don't see them again. So I'm not wasting my time anymore, right? I'm only going to talk to those people who are serious. Well, in the first place, we cannot calculate the benefit that somebody gets for coming and associating with devotees for even a week, what to speak of a few months. Secondly, what I've seen, because now I'm getting old, what I've seen over the years is that people who went away, they come back. And I can't remember who said it this morning, but it's absolutely true. They don't forget. We've had people come and say, I used to come here 20 years ago when I was a teenager, And, I just got married and I'm having, some questions in my life. So the first place I thought to go for answers was back here. So we're getting people that little bit of endeavor, but they're on the path. They're on the path. So we want to welcome people and give them as much as they're ready to take. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is one example of something we do. We have a Christmas Prasadam festival and 6-hour kirtan. All right, and it is open to anybody who wants to come. This is one of our community members that we rarely see, but she came because she likes prasadam. And we were very glad to have her. Sometimes at these events we'll get people who come, and last year there was a group that came and kind of wiped out the prasadam table for a little while, and we didn't really know them, and who are they? And we concluded from that experience that next year we have to have more prasadam, okay? So that should be our mood, that whoever walks in the door, we have something to offer you, because we do. It's absolutely true. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so this is that controversy about, how do we protect our movement while at the same time being really inclusive. So we want to be liberal in distributing this knowledge, but conservative in maintaining our Vaishnav Siddhanta. And there's two snails facing each other, and the caption says, this town ain't big enough for both of us. But fortunately, the town is big enough for both approaches. One of the things that we've observed is, if we tell people, in order to practice bhakti yoga, you need to chant 16 rounds a day, follow these regulative principles, wear tilak, bow down in this way, the initial reaction most of the time is, okay, well, I guess I can't practice bhakti yoga, right? But if we just let them come, then eventually they start asking, can I do this? Can I do that? Or they get inspired. I'd like to find a guru. Or I've met this Maharaj and I'd really like to become his disciple. And then they want to do these things. So if we have faith in the process, then we will see progress. Next slide, please. All right, so one of the essential foundations of building a community is the 6 loving exchanges that are described in the Nectar of Devotion. Srila Prabhupada actually said that ISKCON was designed to facilitate these 6 loving exchanges. Somebody was asking this morning, how do we get a congregation that isn't split into little cliques, that's all one-pointed? When you talk to the older Srila Prabhupada disciples, it's not that everybody got along all the time. It's not that everybody always wanted the same thing. But where people have that really nostalgic, wow, we really did so much together feeling, it's because they felt like a family. The early devotees, they felt like a family. So, your brother may drive you crazy, but you still love him, and you still want him to be part of the family. So if we can maintain that mood, then it's much easier to achieve that unity in diversity that we frequently hear about. Next slide, please. The jiva is hungry for kindness and love. The slide says the 6 loving exchanges are our most powerful and attractive outreach tools. And this is really true. My husband likes to say, after years of preaching, he thought of a new strategy. He said, I'll just be nice to everyone. And it has been the most effective strategy that we've had. To take an interest in people, to welcome them, and to just be nice. It's what everybody's hungry for, because honestly, there aren't that many places you can go in this world and be welcomed in and be treated nicely. Next slide, please. And this is just listing the loving exchanges. Offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasadam, and offering prasadam. These are the 6 loving exchanges included in the Nectar of Instruction. One of the things that happens in communities is we get busy, because we know we're supposed to do this. This isn't news. You've all read this. No one's going, oh my God, I've never heard that verse, right? You've heard that verse, okay? But what happens is we get busy and we don't do these things. We may see each other only at the Sunday feast. We may interact with each other only standing side by side in kirtan. And that's wonderful, but it's not enough to build a community. So one of the things we want to do is be intentional about loving exchanges and to create some kind of system or program where the loving exchanges are built in. In other words, you don't have to stop and say, okay, I'd like to have a loving exchange with someone today. How am I going to make that happen? But rather, it's a natural part of the way the community works. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that at a later point. I'd also like to quote something that Radha Swami told my husband and I a few years ago that has been really powerful for us on this same topic. We sometimes confide in him, we're having difficulty with this aspect of our preaching, or, that's not going so well at the temple. And Maharaj is very kind. He likes to give us these one-liners, So he said, relationships will solve everything. And that was very unsatisfying to me at first, relationships will solve everything. I want to know what I'm supposed to do about this problem. But when I took it to heart and actually tried working on the relationships, he was right. If we get our relationships right, all the other problems can be solved, because the real problem is the lack of that connection. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so these are some of our congregation members. We have facing the slide on the right-hand side, that's Dr. Ralph. He came to us through SRF. He owns his own business. He installs solar panels. And, at first I think he was more or less curious. But through association, because he keeps coming back, he's becoming interested in getting initiated, and he's doing a lot of service. Same thing for Bhakta Will on the other side. I guess that would be left. So what we want to do is not tell people, this is what you have to do to become a devotee. Because most people, when they first meet us, don't want to become devotees, right? I certainly did not want to become a devotee when I met the Hare Krishnas. I, in fact, even made the statement that this was a wonderful philosophy, and I had all kinds of admiration for Srila Prabhupada, but there was no way I was joining the Hare Krishna movement. Okay, famous last words. But if we associate with this process enough, then our hearts become softened and we're able to receive. So one of the things that Bhakti Tirtha Swami told my husband and I was, tell people how to enhance their lives with Bhakti Yoga. In other words, I'm not asking you to change anything. I'd just like to give you something that's going to make your life better. All right, so we're going to enhance lives with Bhakti Yoga. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're going to open our doors wide, but we also need to have a lot of different doors. Okay? Because not everybody wants to come in through the same door. Traditionally, we've had the Sunday feast program. Okay, so you come into the temple, you sit on the floor, there's a lot of stuff going on, there's really cool music, and these gorgeous personalities, dolls, statues, whatever they are on the altar, and there's somebody up there waving things around, and everybody's jumping up and down and yelling something, and then we eat, and it's great, and I go home. Okay, and I have no idea what just happened. So some people are going to be totally okay with that. If they come from an Indian background, it may be totally familiar and they know exactly what's happening. Other people love things that are exotic and unfamiliar, and they're curious and they're outgoing, and they'll ask and they'll learn, and that's great. But a lot of people will walk in and think, I've never experienced anything like this, I'm freaking out, and I'm going home. All right, so we want to give them another way to approach. There's lots of different things. I'm looking around at this temple. I can see that this temple community is already doing those things. You have a mantra meditation program. You have a yoga class. You have home programs. These are all things that we can offer to people as other ways to approach Krishna consciousness. But again, we have to be intentional about those. Next slide, please. Okay. It's not a race. With an accepting mood, we're going to facilitate those who are progressing slowly as well as those who are progressing quickly on the path of devotion. And the turtle is saying to the rabbit, you're going down. Okay? So if we expect people to progress, if we have a preconceived notion of how they're supposed to progress, all we're doing is creating a barrier between them and their perfection in Krishna consciousness. That's not our job. You know, it's up to Krishna and Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada how fast everyone progresses. So we want people to keep coming back, even if we're thinking, she's never going to get it, he's never going to get it. I think I have probably a 100% record in terms of anticipating who's really going to catch the fire in Krishna consciousness. That is, I've been wrong 100% of the time. Okay? I don't know. You know, some people who hung around for years and years, all of a sudden they catch fire. Other people who come in looking like, you know, they're going to set a record for becoming a pure devotee, fizzle out. So, you know, give the mercy to everybody. Next slide, please. This is one of the examples of what I was just talking about. This is a devotee named Prabhupada Das getting initiated. He's in his 60s here. This was just, I think, last year or the year before. He met the devotees when he was 15. And the first thing he did was yell at them, curse at them, and throw rocks at them. Okay? He was in Philadelphia. He was a young, juvenile, delinquent type of kid. And that was his interaction with the devotees for a few months, was harassing them and throwing things at them. There was a devotee who was going out on Harinam and on the receiving end of this behavior. And at one point, he walked up to Prabhupada Das and he said, "You know what you are? You're a little punk." And that changed Prabhupada Das's heart. Absolutely changed his heart. He gave a donation, and after that, he became friendly. He associated with devotees for years and years, you know, and had his struggles up and down. Plenty of times, plenty of devotees would think, you know, haven't we put enough effort into this person? You know, but here he is, a disciple of His Holiness Gunagraj Maharaj. And I think a lot about that exchange, you know. I wouldn't think that "you're a little punk" would be like the best preaching line ever, okay? It's not recommended. But two things were going on there, all right? One is, Trilochan was speaking Prabhupada Das's language. Okay, he was a little punk from the street, and he could recognize, you know, that language. But I think even more importantly is he was being acknowledged. You know, what people want more than anything is just to feel like someone notices, I matter to someone cares. There's a principle in psychology called the Hawthorne principle, which says that any attention is better than no attention. So sometimes when people are acting out, you know, it's because it's a call for love. You know, so we have all the love. Krishna has all the love, and he gives it to us. So if we can just give a little bit of Krishna to people, we can fill their hearts in a way that nothing else can do. Next slide, please. All right, so now we're going to talk about some of the things that are going on in San Diego. The main thing is keeping the congregation informed and connected. Okay, so communication is really important. We can't have loving exchanges, we can't have programs and all that other stuff if we don't know what's going on. I was really inspired to see the sign for the mobile app that Houston has. You text something somewhere and you get to download this app that gives you all the temple programs and everything. That's fantastic. Next slide, please. So in San Diego, we do this through a newsletter. It's a constant contact newsletter. It's very simple. It's a template, so you don't have to be computer savvy to do it. And what we do is we put the newsletter up on the website, send it out in email, put it up on social media. So however people are accessing information, they have a way to get it. And now we need to get a mobile app too and have it sent directly to their phones. Next slide, please. So part of the reason why we're doing this is because we want to provide a spiritually centered social network for people. Because here's the thing, people are going to socialize, all right? People who don't socialize, there's something wrong with them and they need psychiatric treatment. It's something you need to do. It's good for your mental health. So if they're not socializing with devotees, they're forced to socialize elsewhere, you know. And some of us householders saw that when we, you know, there was this movement out of the temples and into our own homes in the 80s and 90s. All of a sudden we, you know, weren't seeing devotees and, you know, we were lonely. So what we'd like to do is have something every day that somebody can plug into if they need to recharge with devotees. Next slide, please. We want interconnectedness. So we don't want people to have, and that includes ourselves, we don't want to have just one point of connection with the temple. We want to have a lot of points of connection. If you can't see this, this is a photograph of a number of threads being braided together. And if you've ever carried around a handful of threads, you know it's very easy to drop one. It's very easy for one to slip away. But if you braid them together, then they're going to stick together. So we want to have lots of ways of connecting. We want our congregation, we want our community members to have relationships with each other. It's not enough just to come to the temple, relate to the devotees, relate to the deities, all right? Because if you stop coming to the temple, then what happens? You have no devotees in your life, right? But if we have lots of points of connection, if we build relationships with each other, then you can, move far away from the temple and not be able to go, or your car breaks down and you can't go, or, like me, you get fried with a devotee and you don't want to go, right? But if we have other devotees in our lives and we have good relationships with them, they're going to remind us. They're not going to let us slip away. Okay, next slide, please. Another important principle is we need dialogue, okay? On the right-hand side, you'll see a photograph of Radha sitting on the Vyasa giving a class. That's really important. We learn from hearing from our seniors, okay? But if information is only going one way, from the Vyasa to the congregation, to the community, then we're not getting it right, okay? We need to have information coming back from the community to the Vyasa and information going from community member to community member. People who study education have found that lecturing in this day and age, lecturing is probably the worst way to convey information because people remember such a small percentage of what they hear. All right? The other thing that we've done in our community is you don't hear back from the congregation, you don't know what they didn't understand. Okay? We have had experiences where somebody who's been coming to the temple for 10 years will say something and we realize, oh my gosh, you don't understand that Krishna is a person. How did that happen? But it's because we understand the information we're getting through the filter of what we already know. All right, so it's very easy to hear something and think, oh yeah, that's what I've heard before, So we need to be hearing from each other, okay? And I'm going to talk about some ways to do that in a minute too. Next slide, please. Okay, so we strive to have ongoing weekly and monthly events so that, like I said, there's something every night for somebody. Please, next slide. We also have annual and special events, okay? So one of the things that we have going on, one of the extra doors that I was talking about, we have a Krishna lounge, which is in a house next door to the temple, no deities, people are kind of in casual clothes, chant the Mahamantra, very, very short lecture that does not address Krishna consciousness specifically, and then prasadam. Okay, so people can feel comfortable and come in. And Devarinta Swami, I think, pioneered this in New Zealand. A lot of temples are doing it. It's a great way to get people and the yoga crowd in the door. Next. We have weekly temple events like every temple. We have the Sunday Feast program. Next slide, please. We have classes. And one thing that we found, people love classes. Some people don't feel comfortable coming in and asking a lot of questions, or maybe they don't even know what questions to ask. But they will feel totally comfortable, in a classroom setting, because all of us have that experience. Coming to the temple might be a new experience, but taking a class, everybody's done that. So, next slide, please. Weekly home gatherings. These are really important, and I think, this is my opinion, but I think that this is the core of really getting your community to bond together. For one thing, small groups, and that was mentioned before also. I have no short-term memory, so I can't remember who said it. But when we have a smaller number of people, we actually can build relationships. You can't have a relationship with 100 people, but you can have a relationship with 10 people. So we've taken something that is modeled on the Bhakti Vriksha program. How many people have heard of the Bhakti Vriksha program? Okay, how many people have a Bhakti Vriksha program in their community? 10, awesome, okay. So that's a program that Jayapataka Swami promoted, and it follows the format of the Christian and other small group meetings. It starts with kirtan, japa chanting, discussion, prasad, very simple. What we found with our crowd is that they don't deal well with rules and regulations. Okay, so one point I want to make is it's really important to know your audience. Who are you preaching to? Okay, if you're preaching like we are to the yoga crowd of young Western body devotees, being there every week at the same time, that's a challenge. You know, they may come 1 week, they may not come for 3 weeks. So we had to change the Bhakti Vriksha format a little bit, and then we call what we have now the Bhakti Chakra. And one of the things that this does is it makes the loving relationships that we talked about before, it makes them very natural. We have a discussion-based format, so somebody gives a presentation for 5 minutes and then everybody discusses it. What did you find most interesting, or what's your reflection on this topic? Okay? So we're hearing from everybody. Everybody feels valued, everybody gets their voice heard. You know, and that makes them want to come back. We get to know each other really quickly. If somebody comes to 3 or 4 Bhakti Chakra groups, they have a couple of friends in the congregation already, and that really helps them integrate in. We also do an icebreaker, which is just like a fun little get-to-know-you thing. That may be the most valuable thing we do, actually. You know, you really can tell a lot about a person by how they answer certain questions. We have one young man who's computer, is an IT guy, very, very, very left brain. And we had an icebreaker that was, if you were a fruit or a vegetable, which one would you be? And he couldn't answer it. Because he just couldn't process, you know, how could I be a fruit or a vegetable? But his inability to answer and the struggle that he went through to answer was so revealing. You know, we learned so much about him. So these simple little things help us to become closer to each other and help our congregation to become more cohesive. Because a lot of times when we're not getting along, we're not cooperating together, it's because we're not communicating. You know, I don't know how many times I've had a conflict in my family, anyway, where we actually agree with each other, but we're expressing it in different ways. You know, so we're arguing over something, and at the end of it we realize, oh, we both wanted to do the same thing all the time, right? So the more we can communicate, the closer our communities will be. Next slide, please. We also have monthly home gatherings, and most of these tend to center around kirtan because everybody loves kirtan. You know, not everybody likes a discussion group, but everybody loves kirtan. And here's food for thought. If you can get 12 people to agree to host one kirtan night, potluck, you know, all you need is a place to sit, some instruments, a couple of kirtaniyas. 12 people to do that one time, you have a whole year's worth of programs. That's something anybody can do. And one of the things that we found when we started doing this work is temple authorities are many, many times so overwhelmed by taking care of the deities in the temple that they don't have time to think about how can we make our congregation, you know, more cohesive. They're thinking, you know, where's the Pujari for the 4 o'clock offering? You know, why isn't this happening? So sometimes we say, why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? What are they going to do to make our temple more cohesive, right? Well, I have met them, and they are us, okay? We are the they. And we can do this. When my husband and I started doing this service, no one appointed us. You know, we did the service for a year and then they gave us the title because we were already doing it. And we didn't, when you're doing home program, you don't have to ask for permission, right? It's your home. You can have as many programs as you want. So this is something any of us can do a little bit, like Shishika Prabhu was talking about. We do a little bit, and because there's so many of us, we can have a big effect. Next slide, please. We also have a monthly Sankirtan festival, and I just want to echo what Vaisheshika Prabhu has said. This is really important. Book distribution is really important. The way Vaisheshika Prabhu has set this up, the idea is we just go out, there's no competition, we're not, we don't have a quota, we don't need Lakshmi points, the idea is just to go out. Even if you distribute one book or you talk to one person, that's a success. But by going out on book distribution, we get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya in a big way. And for new people, it's a really powerful experience. So I strongly recommend, if you don't have regular book distribution in your congregation, please consider this. We go out once a month for a couple of hours, and we get so much back from it. Thank you. Next slide. We have these picnics that we do. And the reason why I like these picnics is because it's a custom-designed festival. You can tweak it to fit what your community needs. Now, as Hare Krishnas, we already have tons of festivals. Sometimes when I'm decorating the temple, I think we have too many festivals. But those festivals aren't always the best time to try to build relationships, There's already a particular program, we have kirtan, we have abhishek, there's not a lot of time for personal interaction. So we started having these picnics. They're very family friendly. Bring the kids, they're not going to be bored. We've got a bounce house, we have, volleyball, tetherball, sack races, all kinds of things for the kids. We have fire yagas for the adults, and kirtan, and a speaker, and tons of prasadam. And then we also add one special event. This year we started with the boat, and you probably can't see, but there's this really, really cool canoe that one of our members made, and he attached it to a remote control boat, and we took it out of the model boat pond, and the deities had so much fun, the devotees had so much fun, and it was totally awesome. On Ravi Jai, we built a big effigy of Radha. Everybody writes down one anartha they'd like to get rid of, puts it in Ravana, and we shoot him with a flaming arrow and burn the whole thing up. Again, totally awesome. You can do things in your community that will fit your community. You can, tweak a festival, create a festival. And again, this is something that you can do independent of anybody else. You don't need temple manpower, you don't need temple resources to do this. We put these picnics on for, depending on how much money our congregation has at any given time, between $1,200 and $2,400, and that's really easy to raise. So if you're inspired, maybe there's a day, an appearance day or something that your temple doesn't celebrate, have a picnic. All right, next slide, please. So we want this, kind of summarizing now, we want to care for our members every step of the way. So when they come in, they're brand new, we want to welcome them. You're just here to find out who we are, you're just here to pick up your kid, who's hanging out at the temple. Whatever the reason you're here, we're glad you're here. We'd like to offer you something, whether it's prasadam or kind words or something, and we'd like you to come back. Once they become interested, we're here to help you. What are your questions? What do you need? How can we facilitate your devotional service? And then as they continue to grow, let's engage you in service and whatever they need to keep going in Krishna consciousness. This is a photograph of one of our members, Bhakta Jim, who's now John Thakur, and he first came to the temple, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, a long time ago. Might have been even more like 20 years ago. And he was homeless at the time, and he didn't stick around, But as we talked about, he's one of those people that came back, right? And when he came back, with his long hair and his big beard, and, eating meat, and a member of another church, but he came back. And we welcomed him in, and he started to do some service, and he started to chant rounds, and he kept coming back, and he kept coming back, and over time, if you could see the slide, you can see the transformation. he's getting initiated in the third shot by Vaisheshika Prabhu, and he doesn't even look like the same person. You know, you can't recognize that these are the same person unless I told you this. That's this process in action, you know, and that's what we can give and what we can receive by focusing on relationships and by supporting each other in our Krishna consciousness. A lot of times I think, you know, I'm just a small devotee, what can I do? Yeah, and, you know, we hear from devotees like Prabhupada Swami, Bhakti Marg Swami, Vaisheshika Prabhu, they're doing so much. Indra Swami, you know, my mind just boggles at how these devotees travel all over the world and engage thousands and thousands of devotees, inspire thousands of devotees, and that's wonderful. But if I think of that as what devotional service means, I start thinking I can't do devotional service, right? Okay? But devotional service means whatever we can offer to the Lord. So all of us can be engaged in preaching. How many people have ever called a devotee when they thought that devotee might be having a hard time or feeling sad? Raise your hand if you've ever called a devotee to check on that devotee. Right? Is there anybody in here who thinks that service might be too hard? No. I mean, that's something we can all do. It's really important. Anybody ever sat next to a new person at the Sunday feast and talked to them? Yeah. Again, you know, something really simple. That's preaching, you know. If anybody's interested in finding out more about our Bhakti Chakra program or, you know, anything else about preaching in San Diego, please contact me. You probably can't see it. My email address is up there. It's radha16108@gmail.com, or just talk to me afterwards. Whatever we can share, I'd be really honored, you know. And I thank you all so much for being here and for your attention. And I'd like to know if there are any questions or comments. And Sutta Prabhu. And we have a microphone that we can. You have the handouts. Okay, there are some handouts that go through the Bhakti Chakra format. Anybody can take this format and just run with it. You don't have to be trained in any special way. And we also have a whole lot of reading sheets. Every week we have a different reading, and we have enough for a year. So if anybody wants to use those, you know, just like I said, contact me. Any questions or comments? No, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
In the morning, Ramapad Swami was bringing out the point about ISKCON's contributions to the world. And his first point was loving relationship with Krishna. So I believe that's true. But I also firmly believe that I don't think it's possible to develop a relationship with Krishna without developing genuine relationships with devotees. And who are the devotees? Everybody. Everyone's a devotee. Anybody who comes through the door is a devotee. Yeah. Even if they say, I'm a demon, and they act demonically, deep down inside, they're not a demon. They're a devotee. Mm-hmm. So if we get it right on this level, in this world, then we'll be eligible to go to the other world. If you can't get it right here, it's not going to work up there. You just have to pass the grades here first. Just a comment.
Thank you, Maharaj. Question right here. No. Okay. Any questions, comments?
Hi. How far along in your spiritual life should you be before you start becoming interested in book distribution? Well, I'm not the authority on that, but I would say that
you should start sharing Krishna consciousness with others from the very beginning. You know, it's really nice, it's ideal if you've read the books that you're trying to distribute, you know, but if you're interested in book distribution, I wouldn't let that stop you. You know, maybe some of the other devotees have a comment on that. Marsh, do you? Okay, we'll let Marsh comment on that question.
Question
and then we'll go
is
to the
like,
next question.
when are you ready? Okay, right now. Go for it. Whatever you know, present that. Even if you don't know much of what's in the literature, you're giving gold. So if people open up that book and read, it's Prabhupada who's doing the talking. So it's kind of like delivering a newspaper in many ways, like a friendly newspaper boy or newspaper girl. In the old days, we used to have that, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a delivery, just deliver the message. And learn as you go along. Read as Radha Devi was saying. Just go out there and do it now. It's fun. It's fun. Who wouldn't want to have fun? It's great being out there. We're fun addicts. We're not fan addicts. We're fun. We are addicted to fun. So going out and interacting with people, it's just a blast.
Like in these small gatherings, what if someone, like a devotee who's already in the moment for a while, they start like over preaching and like talking to other people that they shouldn't be, you know?
Yeah.
So how do we handle those situations?
Well, we actually had to put in our format some guidelines. But one of the most important is no politics of any kind, you know, because you get devotees together and they start talking about, you know, whatever. So, and we also put in something for that very reason. We put in something about we're sharing with others, we're not instructing anybody. And then probably a tool that everyone should have is a timer. We have a 3-minute limit, you know, so normally everybody gets to share more than one time, so you might end up getting 6 minutes or 9 minutes or whatever, but you only get 3 minutes at a time. And while I'm on that point, when you open it up so that everybody gets to share, sometimes you hear people say things that are just contrary to Srila Prabhupada's philosophy or, you know, whatever. And that's okay, you know, because we know what Srila Prabhupada's philosophy is. And what we found is if you challenge somebody, then they become argumentative, right? You know, it's very hard for the false ego to admit I could be wrong. And especially if you're new to Krishna consciousness and you don't have full faith in Prabhupada, why should you accept something just because Prabhupada says? But if we just keep repeating what Srila Prabhupada says, Srila Prabhupada's take on that, you know, it's very interesting you say that, but Srila Prabhupada's take on that is blah, blah, blah. Over a course of a few weeks, a few months, you know, half a year, they come around. Because Srila Prabhupada actually does know, you know, and Krishna consciousness does make sense. And so ultimately, people end up accepting it, even if they might have started out believing something completely different. Thank you. It was a really good question.
The wrong message if someone's saying something else, I mean, which is contradictory to the teaching of Prabhupada, and the new people are also sitting there, how, without being offensive, how you stop them, it's...
Okay. A couple of things. One is you need to make sure that you have some older devotees in the mix. You know, you don't want one, you know, devotee and 10 brand new people. That's not a good mix. So you want to have some experience in the room. But we, you know, started out with the idea that if people hear something that's wrong, then their Krishna consciousness is going to be ruined. You know what? They've heard so many things that are wrong before they ever get to our door. You know, so even if they hear something that's wrong, you know, if we keep presenting our philosophy, they're intelligent, you know, and Lord Chaitanya is going to give them enough mercy that they're going to be able to accept the right message. So we don't have to be so afraid, you know. And like I said, we'll just comment, that's a very interesting point of view. Here's what the Bhagavad Gita says about that. We're not, most of the time when people say something that's kind of out there, they're giving their opinion, right? When we speak, we're speaking from Shastra. And most people are intelligent enough to think, okay, well, that's from the scripture and that's just your opinion, How do I weigh those? Yeah, good question. Thank you. Yes, Mataji in the back there.
Thank you, Mataji, for giving such a nice class. I'm from New Zealand and I'm coming from a place where we have lost our temple, our deities, everything. But one of the things that is keeping us together is having daily programs in devotees' homes. Like you said, the Sunday feast, it's not enough. Mm-hmm. So to get to know somebody, I tend to invite them in your home and you get a different perspective. Yeah. So I find it quite amazing as I'm traveling through America. I'm finding there is more warmth in different places compared to others. And Dallas and Houston have really made my day. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And that's a good point too. We can all end up through job changes or whatever in a community where there's no temple. So, we can't always depend on somebody else creating the facility for our spiritual lives. All right, well, it's past 1:30, and I think it's an offense to keep devotees from prasadam. So thank you all very, very much for your attention. Hare Krishna.